We will be in the book of Matthew today, chapter 7. We're going to pick up on verse 7, read to verse 12. Book of Matthew, chapter 7, verse 7 to 12. That should be a pretty easy one to find. Should be a familiar portion of Scripture as well. If your daddy say amen. Amen. Okay, I heard a few of them, so if anybody else like to join in, just pick up as you get there. All right, book of Matthew, chapter 7, verse 7 to 12. Let's see what God's Word has to say to us this morning. It says, "Ask and it will be given to you. Seek and you will find. Knock and it will be opened to you. For everyone who asks receives, and he who seeks finds. And to him who knocks it will be opened. Or what man is there among you who, if his son asks for bread, will give him a stone? Or if he asks for a fish, will give him a serpent? If you then, being evil, know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more will your Father who is in heaven give good things to those who ask him? Therefore, whatever you want men to do to you, do also to them, for this is the law and the prophets." We're starting a new sermon series this week. I'm calling it Running in Circles. Can anybody identify with that besides me? Running in circles. That's no fun. You know, after a while, you're like, there's got to be more to life than just running in circles. You seem like you run from one thing to another. But something that I've noticed as I was preparing for this sermon this week is that in life, we chase after many things. We chase after so many different things. But as I look at some of the things that I've chased after and I've pursued in life, I look at society in general today. One of the last things that I see pursued or chased after by anyone in this life is wisdom and discernment. How much wisdom and discernment do you see in our world today? Very little. We have knowledge in abundance, but wisdom is sparse. There's very little bit of wisdom. You know, knowledge and wisdom are not the same thing. You know, make no mistake, wisdom and knowledge, we tend to compare those things. Knowledge is much different than wisdom. Knowledge is basically having an understanding of facts and information. There's a lot of that. People love to absorb knowledge and they love to gain all this information. But when it comes to wisdom and how to apply these things, it is much different. It's nothing alike. I don't even know how you would put a definition on actually wisdom. Wisdom is kind of knowing what you know, but also knowing things you don't know. You said, wait a minute, say that again, Pastor. Wisdom is knowing what you know, but it's also knowing things you don't know. You said, wait a minute, Pastor, that don't even make any sense. How could I possibly know things that I don't know? With God, God can give you wisdom and understanding of things you really shouldn't have in life. Maybe there's areas you have no training in. Maybe there's topics you don't really even have any grasp of what happens there. But maybe something comes in your life where you have to deal with those situations. God can give you wisdom in how to handle those things. So that means you know things that you don't really know. It's because of God. That's wisdom. God can give you understanding of things that you have no training in, no understanding about, no experience in at all. But also, when you gain this wisdom, it's not simply knowing what to do, but to do it. A lot of things, how many times do we know the right thing to do, but we choose not to do it? We choose not to do it for some reason. When you understand how life works, it's going to change how you approach life. It's going to change how you do things. When you realize you are not the center of the universe, things are going to change. How many times have we thought that we're the center of the universe and things revolve around us? That is not so. When you truly have godly wisdom and you're applying that in your life, it will change how you go about things in life altogether. I can remember many times as a young man, you know, all of us, we thought we were the center of the universe. we were so full of ourselves. Sooner or later, we found out we weren't. What kind of motto did you grow up with as a young person, as a young adult? Maybe did you live by the motto, if it feels good, go for it? I think I did at times. I know I'm not the only one here. If it feels good, go for it. Because we don't want to choose the difficult thing. We want to choose the thing that always feels good. But I know that if I always choose the thing that feels good, go for it, that puts me at the very center. That means it's all about me, whatever I feel like. And that's not really a place I'm supposed to be at. Anytime you put anything with God in this very center, and that includes yourself, besides God, it's never going to work out well. Now, as Christians, you're going to say, you know what, I know God sits on the throne. I know He's in the very center of the universe, and He takes care of all things, and He sits on His throne. But what I find out is, even though we know that God sits on the throne, we want to pull a chair up beside Him and help Him. We want to sit there and help Him make choices and decisions. Because maybe, you know what, he might not understand it. He might need my help in making this decision. Yeah, we want to pull up a chair, you know. We really shouldn't be pulling up chairs alongside God. Believe me, He doesn't need our help. You know what? God made out all right before we ever come along. And I think He'll be all right when our time comes too. He will be okay. But we want to give Him a helping hand just in case. Sometimes we become overconfident in life. I know I'm also not the only one's ever done that. We become full of ourselves and overconfident. We tend to become overconfident at times because we're listening to all the voices in the crowd tell us how great we are at what we're doing. Tell us how great a person we are. You got to be careful where you get your advice from. Be careful who you're listening to, including yourself. How many times have you gotten advice on things that you never asked for? And it's probably came from somebody who should have been taking advice, not giving it. Have you ever had somebody give you advice on things that they had no clue about? They didn't have any idea about the topic or the subject or whatever it may be, but all suddenly they're inserting their opinion into it. Now, in our great nation, we're allowed to have an opinion, but I'm telling you, you better be careful with all this advice you're trying to take in. And these people, they might mean well, but they have no idea what they're talking about. Be careful where you're getting all this advice from. Many times, you know what? I said, I don't listen to anybody. I don't take advice from anybody. Well, really, a lot of times people like that, they think getting advice from themselves is seeking the wise counsel, and that's not. You know what? I know better than anybody else. I don't need to ask any questions. I got this figured out. Yeah. We're going to keep getting what we're getting as long as we keep doing what we're doing. There's times for us to move forward in our walk with God, it's going to require some change. I don't know about you, but I don't like to change. I like to get comfortable. I like to keep things just the way they are. But how am I ever going to become the person God wants me to be if I don't make some necessary changes? Looking in that mirror is one of the hardest things I'm ever going to do. Because it's going to require me to make some changes that I don't want to make. Well, I'm not really doing anything wrong, Pastor. You may not be. I'm not saying you're out here as some great sinner. You could be born again and saved by grace. That's an awesome thing, but I'm going to just say this. There's still some changes that are going to be required at some point in your life. We're none perfect. You know what? Is perfection possible? Yes, but it's not probable. We're none going to arrive until we cross over that day. One day we're going to cross over to the other side. Then it's all going to be okay. We go about things and I think we get things all mixed up at times. And I don't know why. Sometimes God has just made it so simple for us, but we just make it all complicated, all by ourselves. Nobody helps us along the way. We just do that. something that I see. I see it in my own life and I see it other places. You can pick any place, you can pick a church, you can pick people, whatever you want to do. There's a mission to things and there's a model to things. Everything has a mission, in other words, a purpose, a mission. But there's a model they use to get there. I mean, we're in a church, so we're going to use the church for an example. That's why we're in the church. Every church has a mission. You know what? I think sometimes they get off mission. Sometimes Christians, they get off mission. What is the purpose, really, of every church? To lead people to Jesus Christ. To get people saved, born again, to lead people to Jesus Christ. That is the mission. Now, the model can change. Because, you know what? Not everybody responds to the same thing. I'm going to be able to reach some people that maybe you're not, but you're going to be able to reach people that I can't. So the model can change. Not everybody responds to the same thing. But the mission must never change. The model can. The mission of the church is to lead people to Jesus. The model may vary. I'll give you a quick example. Dwight Moody. If you're not familiar with him, he was an evangelist in the early part of the 20th century. As he was preaching a revival, he had a lady come up to him after. Now, he was a great evangelist. Had a lady come up to him. He would preach to thousands and thousands of people all across the country. Had a lady come up to him and says, "Mr. Moody, Reverend Moody." You can tell by the attitude. Says, "I don't like the way you evangelize." Like this man's preaching, people are coming to Jesus right and left. And this, whoo. And he goes, "Oh, really? Okay, all right." He says, "Well, tell me." He says, "How do you evangelize?" She goes, "Well, I don't evangelize." He goes, "Oh, okay." He says, "I like my way better than yours." You know what I mean? Somebody's going to try to give, in other words, somebody, as an example right there, somebody trying to give advice, obviously they have no idea about. Nothing they know about. But they're trying to tell somebody who's doing it. Don't let anybody interfere with you if you're doing the Lord's work. If you're doing what God has directed you to do, do not listen to the voices in the crowd. Don't listen to all the naysayers, because they're going to come your way. Even when you're doing the right thing, don't expect everybody to join in on your side. It's just not going to happen. Most people, they want a better life, but they're unwilling to change. How is that going to happen? The key words in Proverbs, the key word is wisdom. Wisdom gives us the ability to live life successfully and skillfully. I want to be successful in life. I want to be able to navigate through life and have success. I'd like to have my life go smoothly. Amen? I mean, I don't want any rough spots if possible, but I know that's, it's going to come. I do know that. But sometimes we just don't always get it. An illustration of the kingdom of mind was this. When cars first come onto the scene, automobiles first come onto the scene, of course, they were taken over from the horse. They were taken over for the horse and buggy. Okay. I mean, where we live at, everybody here has probably been to Amish country. You've seen horse and buggies, and more power to them. But that's not my preferred method of travel. But if that's what they want to do, that's fine. But when they first come along, they were like, some people were complaining, "You're going to put the horse and buggy dealers out of business." Instead of looking at what the mission was. The mission is travel there in this particular topic. It wasn't any particular model. They were so stuck in what they wanted to do, they didn't want to see anything move forward. Well, I thank God. Did anybody here come up in a horse and buggy today? No, I don't think so. I think everybody arrived in a car of some sort, automobile. You know what? So I think it was successful. And I'm glad of that. It allows average people like me and you to be able to travel all over. How long would it take to travel in a horse and buggy? I mean, if that's your thing, go with it. But it's not mine, not at all. We need to move forward in life sometimes. And it's hard to make the change. We get so comfortable in what we were doing and what we always know. Sometimes I just simply need to reevaluate where I get my advice from. And I think that's what we need to do as well. We get advice from our family members, we get advice from our friends, and they might mean well. But is it what God has for you? What is it that God has for you? Do you need to reevaluate where you're getting your advice from? You know, many very smart people have given some wise words in history. But fortunately for us, we have the Bible. It is full of wisdom. Wisdom is a practical way for us to navigate the difficult times in life, the situation, and to be able to do these things. I love practical things. I like to be able to apply them to my life. All these great theologies and all these great ideas and all these things that are up there, that's a great thing, but how do I apply that to my life? If I can't apply it to my life, it's useless to me, no matter how great an idea it is. I like to be able to apply everything to my life. Now, Solomon was known as the wisest man who ever lived. How could that possibly be with a man with so many wives? One woman is more than enough for any man. One woman is more than enough for any man, I'm assuring you. So, the Bible does state that he was the wisest man who ever lived, but sometimes I question it. I better move on before I get my own self in trouble. But what I've noticed about Solomon is this. As wise as he was, he used several different models in how to communicate all that wisdom that he had. He just didn't do it one way. Well, here it is. You either get it or you don't get it. There it is. Well, that would be kind of rough because a lot of it I probably wouldn't get. But God, He allowed him, He gave him so much wisdom, He communicated it in different ways. Poetry, parables, short stories. You know, we know when God gives us something, when God gives you a job, it's your job to make sure it gets done. Not to quit along the way, not to get discouraged, even though we do at times. When God gives you a job, your job is to make sure it gets done. And that's what Solomon did. He gave him all this wisdom, so he communicated it in many different ways. I thought that was great. In the book of 1 Kings, chapter 3, I'm not going to read it, I'm just going to give you the reference. Book of 1 Kings, chapter 3, verse 5 to 9. After God appeared to Solomon in a dream, He offered Solomon anything he desired. Now, I wonder what we would have asked for. We would have asked for something foolish. $1 million, $1 billion, whatever. You know what I mean? Anything our desire. We would have asked. I can't imagine what we would have asked for. God said He would grant anything He desired. We know that Solomon asked for a discerning heart, which is wisdom. God was so pleased with him that He gave him even more. I wonder how God would be pleased with us asking if we had $1 billion. Can't say $1 million anymore. $1 million ain't much money anymore. If we asked for $1 billion, well, I would use it for this and I would use it for that. How much more could God do with somebody with a discerning heart than even with $1 billion? There's a lot of billionaires out there. I wonder how much wisdom they really have. Money's only going to take you so far. Money is a tool. Money is a tool. Never forget that. Money can be used for great things, but it also can be used for foolish things. The book of Proverbs was written to the next generation. See, it's not all about us. Yes, we are to grow and mature and to try to become more like Jesus as we can. But it's, you've got to pass that along somewhere along the line. It's about the next generation. Here at New Liberty, some days our children's ministry is a little bit thin, but there's other days where those rooms back there are brimming full. You know what? Don't tell the teachers I said this, but I'm praying that they're going to pray that they get more children. They're going to say, no, wait a minute. You know, on some days back there. Because it's all about passing it along to the next generation. It's not our job just to take what we've gained in this lifetime and our relationship with God with us to the other side and then never pass it along to anybody else. If you don't pass it along to anybody else, you haven't done your job. You say, well, isn't that your job, Pastor? That's all of our jobs. That's each and every person. You're going to be able to reach some people that others can't. Maybe you're in a position in their life where you can speak into their life where others can't. They would never listen. God has put people in your life for a reason. We're supposed to be reaching at who we can. And I would love to reach the next generation as much as possible. And that's what Solomon even tried to do. With his son, he tried to reach. He had many children. His one particular son, his name was, I think I've talked about him before, Rehoboam. Isn't that a name? Wow, what a name. Yeah. And going to name your next son Rehoboam? Yeah. Yeah. Well, with Solomon, Rehoboam, with all the wisdom that Solomon imparted to him and he trained him up in the ways of God, you would have thought with Solomon as his father and King David as his grand, he would have been a natural. You know, he would just, everything would just fall into place. It didn't. It didn't for some reason. Because Rehoboam didn't apply any of that wisdom that was given to him. He just went out and he made a mess of the kingdom when it was handed to him. In the first year that he became king, he lost 80% of that kingdom. 80% in the first year. He was making a total mess. And it should have been not losing 80%, but gaining. Because he had a head start. I mean, with everything that was imparted to him and given to him. You see, after a while, it becomes your responsibility to pick it up and go with it. Somebody can teach you and help you and guide you and encourage you, but after a while, you have to take the responsibility and go with it. It's not anybody else's fault. You've got, we love to blame everybody else in our society today. It's everybody's fault but our own. Solomon was trying to invest in the next generation, but the next generation did something wrong. They didn't listen. If you don't apply something, it is useless to you. There are usually two groups of people in life, the foolish and the wise. I've been counted with both at times. Where is it that you fall in that right now in your life? I don't want to be counted in with the foolish. Now, at times, there's times in life, it's hard to tell the foolish from the wise. Because of the words that are spoken and some of the actions and things, you can't tell, well, how do I know what I'm hearing? It's hard to tell the foolish from the wise. The only way that I know of to be able to tell the difference truly is look at the path that they're on. Well, the path that they're following, if you were to follow that, will get you to where you want to be in the end. You have to truly look at that. Because sometimes people, they're very gifted talkers. And you're not always going to know the difference. Will that path they're on get you to where you want to be if you were to follow it? Nobody that I know sets out to be a fool. We all think we're on the right path. We're all doing the right thing. Maybe we were taught as kids, or we're just following in our parents' footsteps, or whatever it may be. Nobody actually sets out to be a fool, but sometimes it ends up that way. When you don't follow wise counsel, nothing good is ever going to happen. But what happens is we don't want to listen to anybody because we're insecure about ourselves. We become defensive. As soon as anybody tries to help us, we get defensive. Who do you think you are to tell me that? We become so defensive. You know what? I want to end up where I want to go at the end. When I cross over to the other side, I have a goal of where I want to go. You know what? So if I get offended every now and then, so be it. If it gets me to where I need to be. The ride of this life can be bumpy sometimes. It can be absolutely rough. Life can be just outright difficult. And that's not even, that's mild. That's putting it mild. You know how rough life can be. We've all been through those stages. And it is difficult. It is hard. You question your faith sometimes. But as long as you stay the course, you'll get to where it is you want to be in the end. But you've got to stay the course. And I've often thought about many times, if I could ask somebody in history one question, who would it be and what would it be? And I've pondered many different people. Of course, Jesus comes to mind frequently, but there's many others as well. Is there somebody in history that, if you could ask one question, who would it be? And what question would you ask them? Wherever it is you're with that, I thought about this. There's nothing wrong with asking questions. Sometimes we're afraid to ask questions. Well, I'm going to look stupid if I ask that question. Well, you know what? There's times in my life I try to look stupid without even asking a question. You know what? So if I ask a question and it helps me to move farther up the road, so be it. Questions help unlock life's mysteries. You can't be afraid to ask questions. I had a professor one time says, oh, there's a whole group of us. I said, oh, there is no stupid question. No stupid question. The very next guy raises his hand and he says, well, I have a question. I mean, he was sincere. I don't even remember what it was, but it was, I just like, you know, I mean, everybody kind of looked at him, you know, and like, the professor, I'm like, I couldn't believe it. He said, well, sir, now that is a stupid question. Right after he told him there is no stupid question. I'm like, well, I know I'm not asking anything. I'll keep it to myself. So, but if anybody entrusts you to ask you something, make sure you treat them with respect about it because they might be serious about it. As I've stated before, I've taught every age group from 5 years on up at different times in my life. You know, some of the quick questions some of the kids had for me, I thought they were kidding. But they weren't. It was serious to them. It was real to them. You know, and maybe at first, you know, maybe I kind of chuckled or something because I thought they were kidding. They weren't. And sometimes, you know, people are going to come to you in life. So when they do come to you with questions or things like that, just know that God is ready to use you. Something that seems like, how could he possibly not know that? Well, they don't. But the thing is, we don't look at ourselves. There's things that we probably don't know that we should. Even though we think we got it all figured out, and we don't. I find that sometimes we think that, you know, how can I reword this? Just because you're passionate about something doesn't mean you're equipped for it. There's some things I'm in life that I'm very passionate about. But sometimes when a situation arises, I'm not always equipped for that, how to handle it when things don't go the way I thought they would go, just because I'm passionate about it. But wisdom helps me to navigate through that. Sometimes, you ever notice when we do seek advice, I don't know why we do this, but we tend to go to people who are going to tell us what we want to hear. We want to hear our opinion coming out of their mouth. Makes us feel secure. You know? Makes us feel comfortable. Say, oh, somebody else thinks like I do. But the only thing is, if you're on the wrong path, that's giving you a false security. And it's not going to get you where you need to be. A false security. Because sooner or later down the road, you're going to have devastation come your way because you think you're on the right path and nobody would tell you the truth. Now, the truth needs to be given in grace. Not harsh. Oh, you idiot. No. I've been treated that way myself before, and that was no fun. Even though I was wrong, to be treated like that just turned me away, made me cold. I didn't want nothing to do with it. I wasn't receptive to it. I didn't want anything to do with it. Even though what they were telling me was the absolute truth about myself. It needs to be given in grace. It's got to be both. You've got to have truth and grace. Without that combination, it's not much use. You ever notice sometimes things in life are not always as they appear? We think we're in the driver's seat. If you think you're in the driver's seat, you're in the wrong place. You're in the wrong position in the car. If God is not leading you and directing you as a Christian, there's a problem there. There's something wrong somewhere. If God is not leading and directing us, we get headstrong and we try to push through, and it just makes things worse sometimes. Being led by God is a hard thing to do because, in my own life, I want to do the leading. I've done this before, God, but maybe God's saying, you know what, I want to do something different in your life this time. I know this is the way it went last time, but what if I wanted to do something different? But you still want to do the same thing over and over. The thing, you know what, is it okay that if God does something different in your life? Is that okay with you? Sometimes people in your life are going to tell you whatever it is that you're doing, according to who you ask, that whatever it is you're doing is okay. By what standard are they using? Think about that. Who's telling you that? Where are you getting that advice from? Oh, what you're doing is okay. If they're going to heaven, so will you. It'll be okay. How do you know they're going to heaven? You don't know that. He says God judges someone's heart, not us. We don't really know them. You know, the people that you've known for many years, sometimes you find out things about them later on that you never knew. So that means you didn't know them as well as you thought you knew them. We have to be careful not to put ourselves at the center of the universe. That would count us as fools, not with the wise. I've been counted as foolish many times in my life. And when it comes to the things of God, I don't want to be counted in that crowd. Having godly principles will always outlast popular opinion. As I close here shortly, you ever notice sometimes in life that we feel like we're running in circles? Sometimes there's a circle of negativity in your life that needs to be broken. Well, unless you're relying on God's wisdom and God to get you through things, that cycle of negativity is going to be hard to break. How you think, how you process things. It's going to be difficult because it's normal to you. I meet countless people. They live in a cycle of negativity. They live in a cycle of negativity in their life. It's a cycle, continuous. And they just don't see it. No matter how much you talk to them and how long you work with them, for some reason it is so ingrained into their thought process, they just don't grasp it for some reason. They never break that cycle. They're running in circles in all the wrong ways. You know, God just doesn't want your heart. He wants all of you. Every bit of you. Of course, He wants you to be born again, but how many Christians I see become born again, but they never change the way they think about things, their thought process. They continue in the same cycle, running in circles of doing the same things. That God had so much more for them, but they just wanted to continue in what was normal and comfortable for them instead. Breaking out of a cycle of negativity is going to be one of the hardest things you've ever done. Because you're going to want to go back to it. You gravitate towards that. Trying to learn a new process is never easy. You know what? They say you can't teach an old dog new tricks. Oh, yes, you can too. But I know this old dog don't always like to learn new tricks. That's the problem. That old dog, I remember I had a faithful dog for many years. She passed away now. She was very old. I tell you what, I taught her a lot of tricks when she was younger. When she got older, they said, well, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. I said, that dog is smart. That was one of the smartest dogs I ever seen. That dog was just stubborn. That was wrong with that dog. That dog, it wasn't that dog couldn't learn. That dog was stubborn when she got older. And so it is with us sometimes. We dig